everybody, and welcome back to You Can't Win. This is Tom here, and I'm joined by Don as usual, and also returning guest Big Dave. And today we're going to be talking about our favorite stand-up comedians. Each of us have picked two, at least two. I'm going to kind of cheat. I got three here because one of them is a little obvious. So who wants to start? Maybe Dave, you want to start with one of your picks?
Hey, sounds good. Thanks for having me back, guys. I appreciate it. Obviously, I'm going to pick number one. He's sort of a meme on Twitter now, but Norm Macdonald, Canadian, very dry, pretty much the basis of a lot of the humor that me and my buddies always thought we were similar, that dry humor. When he was on Weekend Update for SNL, that to us was like the greatest thing ever. Like when we saw Norm Macdonald, we never heard of him before then, but when we saw him on a Weekend Update and he would do the OJ jokes,
Yeah.
it would just blew our minds that somebody was doing jokes like that, and it was just like, okay, now this is funny to us, like, you know, not like the typical, you know, Cajun Man or Goat Boy or whatever. Like those guys were funny and stuff on SNL, but when Norm did his Weekend Update, it just blew our minds.
Mm-hmm. Have you read his book?
The fiction one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
Oh yeah. It's good. Yeah. I read the first maybe 70 pages or so. I don't know. I'm still in it, but it's good. Yeah. So
come on, what an easy read.
Yeah. It's a breeze, but like I just I never get around to it. I don't know. So
you're so busy, eh?
Well, I mean, I just I don't know. I've got yeah. No, but yeah, I don't know. It's good, and yeah. What do you think about like his kind of? I guess the meme on Twitter or whatever seems to be that like people don't like him because he's more conservative than, or like he at least associates with a lot of conservative people now. I don't know. That seems to be part of it.
That is, Bro Pair Mike Sullivan had a big meltdown about like his joke saying like how evil Norm Macdonald is or something. I'm glad I hated you now or something like that. But it's just like, who cares as long as somebody makes you laugh. Like I said before, like I don't know if we talked about it, like, you know, Howard Stern always talks about how he loves Israel and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But as long as, you know, it's such a weird thing. Like he's not going to convince me to like Jordan Peterson. I don't know if he likes Jordan Peterson for real, Norm, or if it's just a joke. But I know that Jordan Peterson's a psycho, and I would never listen to him or whatever he has to tell me. But Norm makes me laugh, so I can enjoy that.
Yeah. I like. He said that. Bro Pair said that. Sorry, what did you say that he said? That I'm glad that I hated him?
Or something. It was just this weird meltdown. Like, you know, he's been off Twitter for a while now, but it was just this weird, like, really angry tweet about Norm, and it just cracked me up at the time.
Yeah, that's just such a... I don't know, that really says something about the way people respond to these things, where it's like, oh, I'm glad I was on the right side of things because, you know, like... You're happy that you hated someone who is now like, I don't know. That's really ridiculous.
Like Noel Gallagher, my favorite, one of my favorite musicians, loves Tony Blair but hates Jeremy Corbyn, or, you know, some guys giving money to Trump that I like. You know, like, who cares? It's that's part of my philosophy, right? As long as, you know, the guy makes you laugh. But Norm is very, like you said, his book is very interesting reading, and you can tell like he's a very heartfelt, introspective guy. And I can see some, you know, why he would be conservative in some areas, especially being in Hollywood and seeing like all the hypocrisy and everything.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it is. But honestly, as long as he makes you laugh, he still makes good jokes. He doesn't say like, oh, you can't make fun of this. He still makes fun of like 9/11 and everything like that. The you know, the sacred cow of conservatives or whatever. You can't say that he's, you know, off limits or whatever. It's just, people are so dumb.
And did you watch his show and listen to his podcast and all that? And go through all that?
Oh yeah. His YouTube show is just legendary.
It's great.
Like the first episode was the one with Super Dave. Super Dave was to Canadian. I don't know. Did that show ever come in America?
I only know him from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Okay, so Super Dave, he had this crazy show in Canada, and I think it was written probably by the Smother Brothers. I think, I'm not sure, but he was like this weird stuntman that would like die and like get destroyed. And he had this weird Japanese sidekick called Suzuki Honda, I think, and like it just was like the most retarded, crazy out there show, but it was like perfect for the 80s. Like just
Yeah.
I loved it. And then so
Sure.
like I never really watched Curb until after I saw him on a Norm's show, but just that episode, that first episode is just so insane. Like the jokes that they make him read and everything like that. It was just probably one of the greatest comedy moments in history for me.
Yeah, I love that show because he kind of goes through all the different. He talks to a lot of people that you wouldn't really, they're great comedians and stuff, really funny people, a lot of them, but like they're not necessarily the people you would have. I don't know, like just a standard sort of run of the mill podcast or something. So I think he had Carl Reiner on at one time or something, stuff like that. So
good.
And
he had like Larry King on there.
Yeah, Larry King.
Yeah, Larry King was good.
Steven.
Stephen Merchant.
Yeah, the Merchant episode is probably the other after Super Dave. Merchant's episode was probably my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like a YouTube channel that puts together clips from that show, and a lot of it is from the jokes, the joke section and it's like from different guests and stuff. So that's kind of fun. Like I don't have to watch like a whole old episode, but I still kind of will see those joke things again, and just they're fun.
But just like his whole like especially on YouTube, like the guys that put it together, the stuff about like he's like the greatest talk show guest, and to me that's always been like made me laugh when he would like disrespect just about everybody, like him and Conan have this back and forth, and then the random guests that Conan would have, he would just totally disrespect them, and the chairman of the board one or whatever, that girl from, I think she's from Melrose Place, and she was in some movie with Carrot Top, and it was called Chairman of the Board, and like it was like reference it as like he would, anybody who watched that movie would be super bored, even though like she was on there like trying to plug the movie. It's just great stuff.
Yeah, or when he was on The View or whatever it was called, the show at the time. I can't remember. And he comes out and he starts like saying that like Clinton killed Vince Foster or something.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
Then they tried to make him like recant after the commercial break, and he just didn't.
Yeah.
It's honestly just such great TV.
Yeah. And but you can also tell why he's like, I mean, he's got he got Netflix money, I guess, now, but like you can kind of tell why he had that period of in the wilderness or whatever,
definitely,
because he's uninsurable, basically, I guess is the thing, in a lot of ways. So yeah,
it's good to see him going strong today, though.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's friends with pretty much all like the big sort of comics, and then the people that he really hates, and people know about it. I think one of his best bits, if you ever like go through like his comedy, is like he'll get to know people and try to find out if they're gay. Like Howard Stern's stylist, his name's Ralph Sorella, and everybody thinks that he's gay, but he's always said he's straight. And Norm's like, I had my hand on his lap for about 2 minutes and he didn't move it, and he's like, well, that means he's gay. Like, if some dude put his hand on my lap, I would have moved it right away, but Ralph just left it, and Ralph was like, I thought it was just some weird bit or something. It's just super fun.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to maybe move on to one of our first ones? How about Tom? Do you want to do yours?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to talk about was Patrice O'Neill. I know that's maybe an obvious pick for anyone who knows me, but I feel like I just kind of have to go with that.
He was so good.
Yeah, Patrice was. I think he's one of the best like ever. He's just so hilarious, both in his like stand-up routines. He has prepared material, but a lot of the best stuff that I never got to see him live or anything, but the best stuff that I've seen like on YouTube and all that was when he was just kind of like doing crowd work or just improvising off of something or whatever. And you can really see that on his Opie and Anthony stuff. I mean, thankfully we have like hours and hours of him on Opie and Anthony, so there's just like an endless well of material. But I don't know how many times ever since he died, I've been thinking like, oh, I want to hear what Patrice would have to say about this or about that. Like just imagining him here today with Corona and Trump and all this kind of stuff. It would just be really interesting to see what his point of view would be. But yeah, he's just really unique. I definitely don't like agree with the way he thinks about things, but I always like to see how he looks at things, because from his perspective, it's kind of like he has some logic, right? And it's always funny, and he was an intelligent guy, but also just a very like a different person, just no one was like him, and I don't think we're ever going to see anyone exactly like him. So,
and it's interesting. Like I was listening to on Gervais, Bill Burr was on with Gervais on this one serious show that
Gervais,
Ricky
right?
Gervais does.
It's like, who's Gervais?
That's his name.
Is that him and Patrice and a few of these guys? They were all from Boston. They all come up together, and so like a few of them, like I don't know, a few of the white guys now that you think of, like woke people don't really like Bill Burr either. I don't think they think he's probably a racist or whatever. But
Bill Burr is awesome.
Yeah, Bill Burr's really funny, but he came up in that same sort of crew with Bill Burr, and it just totally blew me away when I heard this conversation. It was Bill Burr and another guy from Boston, but I can't remember his name now.
There was a really weird crew. That Boston crew was like Dane Cook and Joe Rogan.
Exactly, Dane Cook, Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
But, the other guy with them that day, I can't remember. He's like more of a no-name guy, but he's still buddies with them. But he was talking about like how like Patrice O'Neill was part of the crew coming up, and it was really interesting. What do you think, like his interactions, like not so much with Opie and Anthony, but him and Norden?
Yeah,
like, that was pretty wild. Like they definitely were different people. Like I don't know how to explain what I'm saying, but they're not like your typical cut in the wool, just depressed comedians. They were different guys.
Mm-hmm. And then the two of them together really added up to something special. I think a lot of times, like I will go back and watch or listen to that clip of them talking about like Independence Day and Face Off, like all the time. That just cracks me up. And I mean, he had good rapport with like a lot of different people, with Louis C.K. and even with like Anthony Cumia and Nick DiPaolo. Him and Nick DiPaolo going back and forth on like racial like politics and stuff is so funny.
So funny.
Colin Quinn
became a total Quanon guy, QAnon or whatever.
Is he?
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of shouldn't be that surprising, but yeah, that's funny.
He had a show on Sirius for a while. I'm a Sirius guy. I'm old. I'm in my car all the time, so I get Sirius. But he just went off the deep end about like I don't know if it was Hillary Clinton or something like that, but he just went off one day and talking about Agenda 22 and stuff like that. And the next day he was gone.
He should come on our show. He's talking about all the same stuff. He was great on Tough Crowd. I think like Nick is very funny. It kind of goes back to your point about like you don't have to agree with someone's politics to think they're funny. Like those are separate things. And I think it's great when someone has a kind of political bent that I don't agree with, but they can still make me laugh. Like I don't think any comedian I share my politics with them. You know what I mean? So like that's not what I'm listening for. And it's really, it's so dumb that it's become such an important thing for people, that the entertainers that they watch share their politics and are like, you know, posting all the same kind of thing on social media or whatever. Like, just, you know, that's not what it's for, you know?
Do you think that he would have been able to sort of, like, do you think he would have sort of dealt with this new reality where you kind of get slotted in either this sort of, you have to fit the left-wing sort of model all the way down, or you have to sort of reject it, but then kind of, you know, in the model, you kind of reject it, but then kind of buy into its own little package of beliefs. I feel like he wouldn't be able to, you know, I mean, he would try to navigate between that. I think maybe he would kind of be lumped in immediately by the sort of woke crowd as being, you know, far right maybe or whatever in their mind. But then I feel like he wouldn't fit there, right? He wouldn't really.
He wouldn't have a lot of friends over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, like I have a feeling that he probably would not support Black Lives Matter. That's just like a feeling I get. I think he would be supportive of the goals, but then not support the movement itself. And there's a fair number of Black celebrities that kind of adopt that stance. I think he would kind of find a space to be like that. I'm not sure what he would do with Corona. I feel like he might, because he was getting into Alex Jones and Illuminati kind of level conspiracy theory stuff. And I don't know if he would have stayed at that point or kind of, you know, like gone through it like a phase or something and kind of gotten over it. Because I could see him being like an anti-mask kind of guy, but also maybe not. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe, who knows? But I think he'd get a lot more leeway. Black guys can say a lot more weird stuff and get away with it than white guys. It's kind of cool. I rock that line a lot on Twitter. I can say a lot more than some of you whiteys can.
Yeah.
Not get canceled.
Yeah. Maybe that I'll transition to my first pick then, which would be Cat Williams.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cat Williams is great.
Because, and I don't know if you ever listened to his albums, like actual things, but he in some of them he includes like little clips of him just chatting about comedy writing and stuff. Because I guess he's like, that's who's going to listen and to the actual thing instead of, you know, they're usually the live taped performances, whatever, and then he just has a little thing about, and it sounds like him just driving to the mall or something. It's like kind of just recorded. He's just driving around in his car or whatever, talking about stuff. And it's funny because it makes the album kind of uneven because he's got, you know, he's very high energy, high power, and then he dips into this kind of talking about it, and it's really worthwhile to listen to that because you can just tell how much it's interesting because he puts so much effort and energy and stuff in it, and I think he almost feels like amazed that other people around him don't do that. Like that's kind of his attitude a lot towards other comics and stuff. And I mean, he's not like, you know, he obviously spins off and does stuff that he probably shouldn't a lot of the time, but like in the actual bits you can just tell like it's just he goes anywhere that he wants with a lot of it kind of thing. And then that's what's interesting about it too, because, you know, he has like a long bit on one of his albums, more recent ones, I think, about like atheism and how like atheism is the dumbest idea he's ever heard and stuff. And and just stuff like that. Like you would never really get that from just like I don't know, like if you come up from like the UCB improv kind of stuff or something, you wouldn't have like a 5-10 minute bit about like how, you know, not believing in God is crazy or something, you know, like it just, you know. And then his most recent special for Netflix and stuff, I think the first 10 minutes or so are just about Jacksonville, Florida. It's not, you know, it's like kind of just stuff like that where it's like, I really like that, but I like, you know, just entertainer kind of stuff. You know what I mean? He's like very much like there to make people laugh as hard as they can kind of thing. And I respect that at some level because, you know, when I write jokes, it's mostly more like, hey, that's kind of funny or something. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's not like someone buckling over crying or something. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're more of a Far Side kind of a style.
It's just that energy he has and everything. And like you said, those skits where he talks about working on the jokes, and he comes across so different. Like, if you ever go into like his other interviews where he's like talks about how much he loves kids, and he like has a million kids, and he adopts more because he just loves kids and he just wants more kids and everything. He's a very different guy, but that lived experience or whatever, and like just his whole like persona, it's so cool, like how somebody can make that. Like, I think like Norm is very just himself, Patrice is himself, whereas Kat has the two personas, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guy on the stage that's this pimp daddy or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's like the guy that's off the stage, like
Yeah.
he works at his craft in a different way, in that he builds this sort of totally different alter ego that goes out on stage, whereas his real life he's totally different. Whereas
Yeah.
the other guys, Patrice or Norm, it's sort of like their whole life, they don't really switch off. They're always kind of the same people.
Yeah. And just, I mean, even just physically, like, Cat Williams on stage, he's just pouring sweat about halfway through already. Because he's just so much puts into it. And then, and I mean, it's also funny. He's willing to make fun of himself a lot too, which is, I mean, it's sort of like, it's necessary for his role. A lot of like, sort of maybe mainstream comics make fun of themselves a lot, but not in sort of like a, biting way, or not like, I mean, it's kind of like more like foibles of dating and stuff. And,
like, I got a small dick, or I'm so depressed or whatever. But Cat was different. He like attacked himself.
Yeah. And he has that, I think in, after one of his kind of, media explosion kind of things, he had like, I think in his next special, he said something like, there's a lot going on in the world today, and he goes, there's a lot going on with me specifically, kind of thing. And it's like, that's one way to put it.
But you made that joke, like how, like, I don't know, like, I would say, would Cat Williams be the last guy that was like this very aggressive stand-up comic that like now, like if one of those stand-up specials came out now, like people would be like, oh my god, we got to lock this person away and he's evil, like, or something. But like back in the 80s and 90s, stand-up specials were so aggressive and angry and saying like I'm gonna kill my wife or something. But now it's very different. Like people would be really upset if that happened.
Yeah, I said that, like, if Netflix special nowadays, it's like, I get anxiety at work and on dates and with my, when I, at the store and all that, just like a list of them. And then I was like, comedy CD in the 90s was like, you should be able to kill one woman in your life, but only once in your life. That's pretty much where I don't know.
There's this kid online. He's really funny. Thomas, his Twitter is like Leon Killer or something like that.
Oh yeah. Leno Killer, I think.
Yeah, and he made that joke 2 weeks ago that if you spend $500 at Hooters, you should be allowed to kill one of the waitresses.
Yeah.
And people lost their minds. Honestly, like there was so many people that said that, like, oh wow, this is typical most leftist men. Like nobody even knows if this guy's leftist. They just say that, like, because
they always say that. Yeah, it's always this like, is the typical leftist. Like, oh, leftist, is he?
He just wants to kill a woman. That's his goal or something like that. It just honestly, like all the replies to that are funnier than the actual tweet.
Yeah, he just it's funny. Yeah, they don't. There's no subtext. There's no, it's just people think that you're just directly calling for like female genocide or something. I don't know. It's like, it doesn't make any sense, but yeah.
Most people don't want to kill their waitresses, no matter how restaurant. Typically not.
Yeah. Do you want to do maybe your second one?
Would be Bernie Mac.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Definitely, like, my favorite of all time would be Eddie Murphy, just because raw and what were his two main ones?
Delirious, yeah.
Delirious and Raw were so amazing, and that sort of, foundational of stand-up comedy. But I got into Bernie more after his TV show. I never had heard about him, but it's a testament to like black people are just more funny than white people. Like a white guy with the same rap as Bernie wouldn't be as funny, I don't think. Like he just had this flow and a rhythm. Like all the stuff he said wasn't like he doesn't just tee off joke after joke after joke. It's about the delivery and his personality and just the way he weaves it together. To me, I love that. I just, that larger than life person. I ain't scared of you motherfuckers. I ain't scared of you motherfuckers. Like that to me was like so. I just really loved it, and all his stories were just so crazy and wild. Like I don't know if like his TV show was built on that. I probably don't even remember much of his TV show, but like his famous like comedy routine about like taking care of his sister kid because his sister's like probably a crackhead or something, and like family's different. If you're black, you gotta take care of everybody's kids. If you're doing well, you gotta take care of the kids. And he's just so funny. Like I really it really made me understand like that idea of like attitude and bringing that all together and just having a story to tell more so than just joke after joke.
Yeah. Have you seen the documentary about him? There's like a documentary that like one of his relatives did. I think maybe his daughter or something. But and it's good because they've got like clips of a lot of people talking about him and stuff. And because he died when he was 50, I guess. So that's pretty young. And so it was funny because they had a few little good stories in it. Like he was in Ocean's 11, and that was like a huge get for him, I guess, because he had like a few things that he was doing. He had a few things before that were kind of pretty big and stuff that he did well in.
The big movie he did, which was, it was pretty awful, but it's still funny. He had his TV show, but Ocean's 11, it was so good. Like his character, like was hilarious, and it was just like perfect casting.
So what they were saying is that like he said earlier in his career, he would try to go get parts in Hollywood and stuff, and like try to get like roles, and they would say we don't like how you speak. They're like you kind of speak in a certain mumbly kind of way of, because he does the little, says things very very quickly and kind of mumbles it along and gets through it, and then and so they wanted him to speak differently, and it never really worked, right? Like he never got the part because of that kind of thing, right? And then after Ocean's 11, they said that and during that they said no, don't change the way you speak because that's what we want. We want you doing you kind of thing. And that was kind of a funny transition point in it, I guess, right, where it's like you can't people are saying you got to change, and then one day they're like no, you're perfect how you are, kind of thing. Yeah, so I don't know.
When do you think those big suits are going to come back from the Kings of Comedy tour?
Yeah.
NBA drafts from 10 years ago.
Sure.
But, do you ever like Bernard the Entertainer and all those guys from Kings of Comedy, Martin Lawrence, and all of them were funny, but like Bernie was just, to me, different. Like just the way he could rap and like just talk about normal stuff and just make it funny. Like just the way he could just start talking it would just make me laugh. His delivery was so funny. Like I just was totally like, every time I'll throw on like one of his like skits or something, and just his delivery like always makes me laugh.
Like I think that's a key part of all these people we've mentioned so far, is like their delivery is what makes it. Like if you just read what they said on a piece of paper without hearing it in their voice or whatever, it just wouldn't work. Like even someone like Norm, who's very understated compared to like Bernie Mac or Cat Williams, like that's what makes it work. That's really important.
You like imagine like some guy from Twitter, I don't know, like, who does videos that, I don't know, maybe like say Hassan Piker, the guy from Young Turks. Can you imagine him reading some of Norm's jokes? Like nobody would ever be like, what the fuck, right?
Yeah.
That's just first guy that popped into my head. I don't know. Listen to this is on. It's okay. Don't get mad at Tom.
Yeah, Turkish brothers got to stick together.
Yeah. Yeah, he was good. Bernie Mac was also good in Head of State. Like he like that Chris Rock movie that kind of went nowhere, I guess. But like he was a supporting
like
role.
every Chris Rock movie.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It was funny.
It was actually a funny movie. There was like a great scene like that always stuck to me in my head is like when the white people heard that the black guy was going to win the presidency. They like the West Coast people because like all the people on the West Coast. There was like this big stampede of people voting against the black guy.
Yeah, and you got to think that like in 2003 when it came out around then, like it was still wild, the idea of like a black president or something. Like it just didn't seem so. A lot of the jokes in the book I don't even know. I mean, in the movie, I don't know if they. I don't know. I watched it again recently, and it was so funny. Like there's a speech in it that Chris Rock gives that like it's about like how like a populist left kind of speech that he gives.
Yeah, definitely.
It's still better. It's better done and better presented than 99% of actual liberal political speeches, whatever Right. So
was John Stewart in that one too?
I can't remember.
Isn't Stewart like his like political guy? I can't remember now. I'm trying to.
I don't think so. No.
Okay, maybe he's a different
guy. Yeah. So
yeah, Bernie Mac's my second guy.
Yeah, I had one thing I wanted to ask you guys about Bernie Mac. You know the whole "I ain't scared of you motherfuckers" thing. Do you know the story behind that? There's kind of a cool story behind it.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so this I heard from a Donnell Rawlings appearance on a podcast or something like that. Yeah. So I guess he was there. Donnell Rawlings is hilarious and could go on this list of people for me. So I guess this happened at a army base in Korea or Japan or something. I think it was Korea. And so what happened was they were slated to do 2 nights, and the guys on the base, there wasn't a lot going on. So they showed up for the first night and they loved it. Donnell was there. Bernie Mac was there. There's a few other guys. I think Doug Stanhope was one of them. Mm-hmm. But they were going crazy. They loved it, right? Like they were really like dying for some entertainment, and this like really fit the bill. So they loved it so much they came back the second night. But it was all the same people, right? It's all the guys from this army base, and the comedians going up don't really realize that it's the exact same audience. So they do all the same jokes, and they're listening to this, and they kind of start booing, and after a while they start going really crazy, and they're just like just loudly booing over the top of the comics. Like they can't even get a word out through a microphone. That's how loud they are. And there's like a fight breaking out, and it's just going completely crazy. Like people are throwing chairs and stuff like that. So Bernie Mac comes out there, and that's where he does the whole "I ain't scared of you motherfuckers," and then he starts doing his whole thing, and that's where that came from. And he got him. He won him back. Like they loved what he was doing, and they completely won him back. So
that's pretty cool. I can see that. That's because they, comics have like their 45 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever their time in their heads. They don't have any room for anything else. So obviously, like, they're used to like, if you book the same city, there's always going to be a different crowd every night. It's not the same people coming back, but on a military base, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Well, and also nowadays, like there's no, there's pre-awareness of almost everything if they follow you on Twitter and have listened to your things and stuff. So I think that's kind of almost, like there's a comedian Stuart Lee who goes around UK and he does like live shows, and he's great. Yeah. And he seems to, he does do TV stuff too, but he seems to really hate that this whole shift where everything is already known ahead of time kind of thing, and everything is. So he talks a lot about that, but yeah, I think I'll jump into my second one on this, if that's cool, like because you mentioned Doug Stanhope, and I wanted to.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
And so Doug Stanhope is another one where he was one of the first comedians that I listened to his albums and really was like, oh, this is just, it was one of the first things where with comedy where I was like, I just got to listen to everything that he did and everything that like kind of influenced him or whatever kind of stuff. I don't know, I went with it, but and he, you know, I still think he's really funny, like on his podcast and stuff. He has a whole stuff about his shows overseas and stuff. Like a few of his episodes tell those stories and stuff in detail. And I didn't know about the bringing back part, but he talks a lot about. I
may be wrong about Doug Stanhope being on there because Donnell told a few different stories, so I might be confusing that. But
well, I just know that he
with Bernie though.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so his albums are good because he's another person where he's like obviously trying to get the crowd to laugh, like most of them at least. Like he's trying really hard to get them to go for it, kind of thing. Because otherwise, that's the thing is that I think that if you're like an entertainer, like someone's come and paid to see you, you can't just do stuff that you think is smart that doesn't, make them think it's hilarious, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like it's not. There's sort of like a contract there where you're like, okay, well, if I'm, even if I'm some army private or whatever, maybe not army private for Doug Stanhope, but like, if you're some person that doesn't have a media career or something and is just a random sort of civilian person in that mind kind of thing, like then you want to be able to show up, laugh, and if you think a bit beyond that, that's fine. But so he's great with that because he, he'll go gross out stuff and go all over and stuff, and that's, I don't know, I really like that because it's like I still think he's really, he's one of those people that takes ideas and kind of pushes them in strange directions, but he also does a lot of the funny sort of like life stories, like things that happen to him and stuff, and pulls them in strange directions and stuff. I don't know. He just seems like a nice sort of like, he at a very, very early age, he decided that he knew what he wanted his life to be, and he's just made it that, where he's like, I'm going to go on the road. I'm going to do a bunch of drugs. I'm going to drink a lot or whatever. Like I'm going to just have fun and live in Bisbee, Arizona or whatever. And that's what my life is. And that's good enough for me, kind of thing. I don't know. I think a lot of other people, they strive beyond that. And yeah.
Is he still together with that crazy girl Bonzo or something her name was? I can't remember from Stern.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think like his one appearance on Stern where he talked about his mom dying and the going away party they had for her really like affected me like deeply. Like it was really like they like she had this bad cancer and like she was gonna die a horrible death, so she wanted to go and they helped her with I guess morphine or whatever, and they had this big party in his house, and it was just a big celebration of her life and everything like that. And it was honestly it's like one of the few times like when you're driving around listening to the radio and you're just like so engrossed and you're totally like feeling for the guy, and it was really affected me. Like I still think about it all the time. It's a really interesting story, and if you can ever find it on YouTube, look it up. It's really a guy that really loves his mom, and it was a hard thing, but he still did it and made it funny, and like the way he talked about it.
Yeah,
he's just an amazing guy.
Yeah, I think he did that, like he told that story and kind of made it into his act, like in Beer Hall Putsch or whatever.
Yeah, one of his albums he does it. Yeah.
It's like his closing bit goes on for like 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never heard that, but I just heard that Stern interview, but it was really good. Like everybody should listen to it.
Everything I've heard about Doug Stanhope, like from his personal life, makes him sound like he's a really good, generous person. Like he has this apartment somewhere, I think in New York, that he like bought or has been renting for forever, and he just kind of loans it out to other comedians that are, you know, because they're like struggling and stuff. And so he's just always helping people out and stuff like that. I don't know. Like I really appreciate that there's that side to him, and he's not like, he doesn't talk about that either. Right. Like he's not
he's definitely like a genuinely nice guy, but he's like his comedy is so cutting and funny too at the same time. Like,
right. And he's not trying to defend his comedy with that, like, look, I'm actually a nice guy kind of a thing. Like he just does that because it's the right thing to do.
That's the right thing. And I think like so many people need to take a lesson from that you can be a nice person and still say crazy things on as a joke. Right. You know, like it's not cut and dried, you know.
Yeah.
That really drives me crazy.
And vice versa. You can publicly say all the right things and then be like a really nasty, like bad person.
Like Ellen or whatever, right? Like everybody hates her that's ever worked with her, you know, kind of thing. But
well, I said this the other day, but I think that with Doug Stanhope, there's also good examples of him being sort of like ahead of the time for his time, you know, for like what was going on around him in the culture, but then in a way that he can't really get any credit for because he's packaged it in such a way that is so rude and so like crass that the people who would, you know, like the example obviously is that he talks about trans people in all of his albums kind of thing. Like he goes into it in detail, and he has like this line in one of his albums, and it must have come out like 2000 or 2001 or something, you know, like it's like almost 20 years old at this point. And he says like, you know, trans people, they're you know, they're different now. He goes, they build them from scratch now. You don't have to pretend. You don't even have to pretend you were tricked anymore, or something like that. And stuff like that, where it's like he's kind of saying like he's saying something that like is like sympathetic in a way, right?
Right.
It's like I'm saying that like don't hate these people or whatever, or whatever. But it's in a way that like you're never gonna be like, okay, he was a comic saying that at a time when everyone else was like saying like vicious stuff about like if I find out I'll kill them or something, you know what I mean? Like it's just like so I don't know, I've always found that funny because it's like he's got that good heart there, that's the thing. So yeah,
for sure.
I mean, that just kind of cuts through like the political kind of garbage around all that kind of stuff and just gets to like the real life of like what it's like, you know. It's not about like, oh, well, this is the right thing to say because it respects this group of people or whatever. It's, you know, it's sort of more about like the actual reality of.
Right. I just wonder, like, what do these people really think? Like, are they actually mad? But genuine people, when they make genuine jokes, and you can understand, like guys like Doug Stanhope or, you know, Patrice, Norm, they genuinely care about people, and that comes across in their jokes eventually. Like there's so much horrible stuff that they'll say, but at the same time, I just wonder, like, how do people not sort of see that? Like they just focus on you know, the more evil side of things, whereas, you know, like you gotta understand that, you know, there's more warmth and everything in the whole overall skit or whatever. It just goes missing, and it really frustrates me even to this day. Like I just see people like are so joyless and whatever. It just drives me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You just need a little bit of that who care mentality, Dave.
Exactly.
All right, should I do my number 2?
Sure.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so like I said, I kind of have a number 2 and a number 3 because I felt like I had to go with Dave Chappelle for my other choice here, but that's like so obvious. It's kind of like saying like George Carlin or Richard Pryor or something at this point. But I don't know. I just really love Dave Chappelle's stand-up. I mean, even like his, you know, the show, I think that still stands up today. Every once in a while I'll see a clip from it or whatever, and it's just amazing like that is so, it's so run into the ground, but it still like works, you know, it still makes you laugh. Sure. But I really appreciate what he's doing today too. Kind of what I was saying earlier, like he's sort of cutting through a lot of just like the kind of garbage that people are saying. And Yeah, I mean, there's this thing that comedians will say sometimes that I don't think is really true, which is that I think Dave actually came out and said exactly this, that they just want to hear from you. Like, they just want to hear what you're thinking. And I don't think that's really true. I don't think anyone is really that interested in like they're not thought leaders. You know what I mean? They're entertainers. But, in the same way that what I was saying about Patrice is I just always like to hear what Dave has to say. And I think I share a lot more in common with like worldview and whatnot more than Patrice. But Dave just makes everything funny and very human. And you can, like, you've been talking about Dave, like he also has that sort of like very obvious kind of warmth and, you know, behind everything. It's just very clear that he's just trying to appreciate like the whole of human experience and kind of like put that all together and show like the funny side of everything. And yeah,
like, you know, like going to like the old stuff, like, you know, his, like me and my buddies will still quote it to each other every day. Like, you know, the whole, you know, it's great drink or, you know, all that kind of, you know, stuff. And it's just so funny because, like, you know, it's a different culture and he's sort of educating us an culture. And, you know, like the whole thing about, you know, guys jerking off on the bus and stuff like that. And you never see that up in Canada or whatever, but, you know, he's so funny. And like the show is so funny and everybody, you know, quotes it and stuff like that. But you get like those once in a lifetime comedians. And he's definitely, compared to the guys that, you know, like, you know, Norm's hilarious and so is Bernie Mac, but Dave Chappelle's like a once in a lifetime guy, kind of like, you know, Eddie Murphy does, or maybe you would say George Carlin or whoever else, but like just a once in the lifetime kind of like the funniest person in the world almost.
Yeah, I would say so. I think he's probably up there.
He's also sort of like matured over his career too, which is kind of rare in some ways. Where he, you know, he's taken a different role now in society, even like where he's got this like gravitas to him, where he's like, you know, almost like elder statesman kind of thing or something, where he's like, okay, here are things that I've seen in the culture that I don't understand and I'm confused about, and I want to talk about in a way that other people aren't, or something like that. And that's very useful, I think, and is also like it's the only way that he can kind of keep growing, because you know, otherwise he would just, you know, like his other earlier albums are really funny, and you know, his sketch stuff is good, but then this is kind of like a new way of doing it. And I think it's interesting also that how much anger that's generating, because you know, a lot of people don't like that, because I don't know, maybe they think it's pretentious or something, or just like harmful because it's like old man syndrome or something. But I really appreciate it, even when it's some of it is not, in terms of like the joke writing and stuff. Sometimes it's not perfect, but like you know, it's still like the actual parts where he's making like arguments about stuff, and I don't know, and like is just compelling. Like you can't. I remember when I watched that 8:33 thing, I went to turn it on, and I was like, I'm gonna watch like a few seconds of this or whatever, and then maybe watch the rest later. I just basically stood up and watched the whole thing right away. Yeah,
just grabs you. You got to finish it, man. Like, he's so intense about it.
Yeah,
that was a really odd thing to watch, because it's still him and using his voice, you know, even though he's talking about like this really serious stuff. So that I don't know. I think compelling is the best word for what he's doing today, because it's someone worth listening to, and even when it's not quite on or whatever, it's still like it's very interesting. So yeah, something about just his goofy voice, like saying things that are serious, it kind of like strikes me as funny. I don't know.
Yeah, he's got another great voice, but at the same time, like, you know, I don't really like non-funny soliloquies from comics.
Yeah,
because I don't like that preaching. But the 8:33 or whatever it was called, it was, you just couldn't turn it off. Like just the way it came out, like the way he delivered it, it was different. I don't know. It was really good, and I think that shows a guy like just like at the apex of his powers. He understands his voice, his inflection, and all that kind of stuff. And he wanted to get a message out, and he got it out. And yeah, it's amazing. Good for him.
Yeah, he kind of strikes me as if he's like looking beyond, like everyone else is sort of trying to fill some gap or like kind of see where people are and kind of meet them there, and he's sort of like looking above the crowd in a way, like he's sort of like seeing something beyond there. And that, I don't know, you got to support someone who's able to like reach like that and actually make it. I don't know, even if it doesn't always land perfectly, you still got to support it.
Yeah.
So anyway, like the other guy that I had in mind, I felt like Chappelle was kind of obvious. So the other one I had in mind was a comedian. I figured I would pick someone who's kind of up and coming a little bit and active today, because we've all been picking like dead guys or like has-beens or whatever. So someone who I really enjoyed his latest special was Mark Normand. I am a big fan of his podcast with Joe List, Tuesdays with Stories. And he's got a really different style from some of the other people we've been talking about. He's very much more of like, just like a joke machine. Like that special he did and put it on YouTube, it's like a joke every 20 seconds for the whole hour. And they're pretty much all solid. Like it's like 90% was making me laugh. And it's just really... kind of like classic good stand-up. He's got a pretty interesting delivery that it's not interesting in the way that like Bernie Mac is like very unique. Like he's distinctive, but it's not I don't know. I mean, if you know Mark Normand, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, just a really good kind of like joke writing mind. And I guess Jerry Seinfeld has kind of taken him under his wing, and he's been opening for Seinfeld and stuff. So, good for him. Happy to see him kind of rising,
Yeah, I've heard a few of his routines, but I haven't really gotten too much into him. But I'll definitely check his podcast out. I'm always looking for sort of, new funny guys.
Yeah, watch the special. The special's really good. The podcast is him and Joe List forgetting the words for things a lot. So like if you're into that, that's, I don't know. I just like the banter between the two of them, but I can see that not being for everybody, but definitely check out the special.
Definitely will. It's funny, like stand-ups getting big in India, and so like there's all these weird new stand-ups from India coming out. And some of their stuff is kind of funny, but some of it's like pretty bad too. But there's this kid Verdos, I think, or Verdos or something like that. He's really good. Everybody should check him out. Like I was surprised. Like I didn't think that anybody from India would be that funny, but it's definitely interesting that the scene's sort of getting popular there. Like I never thought that, like when you think about stand-up comedy, like there's America, combined with Canada. There's the English comics. There's a few guys from Australia, and that's it. But these Indian guys are sort of getting popular here. Even it's different.
Oh yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah, so I thought that maybe just to close it off to this segment on comedy kind of stuff is that there's a lot of good. I think that there's been kind of a boom of trying to get content out there for things like Netflix or whatever. Like it's cheap content a lot of the time. It's like documentaries about comedy or comedy tours and stuff. So they're just there's dozens and dozens of them released every year now. So I haven't really been able to wade through a lot of that stuff just because I don't, it's not the first thing I go to, I guess, a lot of the time. But, there are good documentaries out there that, there's this one about Richard Pryor called Omit the Logic, which Showtime did, I think. And it talks about his like life growing up and stuff. And I don't know. I find that it makes it a lot more relevant and sort of like human to me and stuff when you learn a lot of the details of it and stuff, and how, it's just great because it talks a lot about him growing up in like extreme poverty basically, and then, going through the whole, having all the problems in his life and stuff.
Like a really different guy. Like listening to his specials after he came back from Africa and stuff.
Sure.
Was just really wild.
he and it talks about a lot about that in the thing where it talks about how for a lot of his early career, if you watch him, and they do a really good job of showing this, is that if you watch him on TV in his sort of early performances, he's mimicking Bill Cosby, like just directly. Like it's just a lot of his early comic stuff is just, and that was because that's how Bill Cosby got on TV, was sort of originally was just basically being safe enough that people could trust him to be on there, kind of thing. I think at some level, like in their sort of corporate mentality on that kind of stuff. But like culture changing, but not too fast, kind of thing, or something. But like it's amazing though that he has that pivot point where he just kind of goes, okay, well, I'm just going to start talking like people actually talk, and that sort of moment of that shift, and then how it affected everyone else around him and stuff, is really interesting to me. I don't know, because it's interesting because it's not necessarily like political in a crass kind of like, oh, he said this and then they had Medicare or something like that. It's not like it doesn't connect to like a policy or something directly. It connects to like a sort of freedom in how you talk to people. It's not like a rule or something. It's like just like it allowed a lot of comedians to kind of come out and be like, talk about stuff like drugs or race and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know. I think that's interesting to me because, someone like Lenny Bruce kind of runs up against the law a bit more directly and stuff, but it's different in terms of, I don't know. There's something about this whole thing about culture instead of just the politics. Like the culture can change. I don't know. So that's interesting to me. Yeah.
No, it was definitely interesting. Like, growing up, my parents they loved the Bill Cosby like video. Like the first time it came out, like we screened it at our house and everybody loved it. Like, freaking out, laughing, like, all the people in our neighborhood or whoever would come over and watch it with my parents and stuff. Like, and they're old Punjabi people, but like it hit with them, right?
Yeah.
And then once you understand like how it was crafted for, like people like that to the suburbs to enjoy it and stuff, and then you see this guy that's, the first time I heard of Richard Pryor was seeing him in like either Superman or one of those shitty 80 movies and like Rooster Millions or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go back into his comedy, and his comedy is just wild, and his life story is wild, and he's just this crazy guy or whatever. And it's just, you really sort of, it's just crazy to see like how like still to this day, I think people look at them in almost the same light, like Cosby and Pryor, or even George Carlin, or any of those guys from that era.
Yeah,
that sort of like were the stand-up kings. But he was just such a blazing, like he really was, like the trendsetter or whatever. And but that's kind of the weird thing about our culture, is like so much of like their lives get swept under the rug, and we just we just remember the punchlines, and that's it.
Yeah. Another one that's like a good book about this kind of stuff I mentioned before, but like Steve Martin wrote a book called Born Standing Up.
Oh, and that's an awesome book.
Yeah, it's good. It's good because again, it's one of those things where you kind of see a person grow. Like it's not just like it's not but like
no, definitely, one of the greats too. We could talk about him as well, but he is definitely one of the greats, as somebody that grew from banjo jokes or whatever to writing these great movies and scripts and everything. And he's that's such a good book.
And then also interesting because he totally exhausts that role and then kind of has to move on and do something else, because he's just like, I already he's like, for years I think his sort of formula is something like it took 8 years for him to come up with his character, 4 years to start getting the hang of it, 2 years to be on top of the world, 2 years to something like that, like he kind of goes through this thing, and then 2 years of being so tired of what he was doing that he wanted to die. And then, then he had to kind of be like, that's enough, I'm moving on or something. So that's interesting too to me, because it's like a whole arc. And then, I mean that, him being so tired of it.
Either, right? Like, our cycle goes so fast that
Yeah.
Nobody could build a persona like that
Sure.
and then break it down afterwards.
Yeah.
And things go so fast. It's
Yeah.
just so, yeah.
And also, I mean, the years when he was exhausted and kind of like done with it was, I think that was be like 84, 83 or something probably, it's
Yeah.
like he's still alive. So it's like, obviously like almost half of his life is after that moment. So it's kind of interesting that way too. He's gone into some interesting directions after that, but, getting into art and banjo and all that kind of stuff. So,
Definitely an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a fan of Steve Martin.
Sure. And, the other documentary that I thought I'd mention, just because it's like an interesting one, is with Jerry Seinfeld and Orny Adams, called Comedian.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
It's kind of interesting because it's like it shows what like kind of psychos comics are in some ways, kind of thing. Like kind of they have their own little subculture, own little expectations for their lives and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, and it like shows them kind of schmoozing and getting insulted and all this other stuff. So yeah, I don't know.
I really like Jerry Seinfeld, like as a person. I think he's very, I don't know, like he doesn't really give a shit about anybody else, and that's just really funny. Like like he genuinely doesn't care about well, you think I'm a he says something and people don't like it or whatever. I don't know. It's there's a lot of people that I guess kind of have that persona, but the way he does it just makes me laugh.
Yeah.
He's definitely a psycho about his comedy, like in his craft. Like, I guess you'd call that autistic or whatever, but him and Larry David and Howard Stern and stuff like that, they don't care. They just sort of, that's what they want. They want to be the best in the world, and they're just going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can appreciate that. Like I just think that's, I don't know. I like that quality in people.
Sure. Yeah, it's cool.
But, yeah.
Okay. And one last thing I just wanted to say is that today I was reading. I mean, because of this, we were going to talk about this kind of stuff. I was listening to. There's this guy named Larry Wilde, who is he's a comedian and stuff, but he's kind of like, I don't know. He just kind of compiles a lot of stuff. A lot of it is like kind of jokes and all that. He interviewed in the '60s, I guess, a lot of top comedians. And they're all on Spotify, all the or iTunes or whatever, his albums of all these interviews, and they include people like Woody Allen, and he asked them. I don't know how long they are. I think it might be like an hour or 2 hours or something, at least. Like they're pretty in-depth interviews about their comedy writing process and stuff, and he compiled them into books. They're pretty interesting because the writers are all very, very charitable to him. Like they think it's kind of annoying and weird, the questions he's asking, I think, at some level, because he gets into like a lot of detail and like making them really state what they believe on very, very small things about like whether you can be, or like, stuff like he'll ask them like, do you think you have to be born funny, or do you have to like, I don't know. It's like almost like 2 hours of the where do you get your ideas from thing from Norm Macdonald or whatever. Like it's just like, it's really, really in detail. I don't know. So if anyone's like really into the writing side of it or whatever, I think that's cool stuff to kind of wade through, because it's like, I don't know. It's like
check it out for sure.
Johnny Carson or something talking for 2 hours to some guy that's like, okay, so how long do you think a joke should be or something? And he's like, what the hell are you talking about or whatever? I don't know. It's good. So yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So do you want to do just a few questions, Tom, do you think?
Sure. Yeah, let's do a few questions here. Okay, let's start with this one. Which ethnic group has the best organized crime?
Yeah, so I took like a few years ago, I was back in university and I was taking like a class on cities and urbanism and all that kind of stuff, and it was like, I think like a 4th year course or something. It was supposed to be for, people that are focused in this kind of stuff or whatever. And there was a guy in my class who was Russian, and he was doing like a presentation once, and it was supposed to be about like an issue in urbanism or something. And what he did was he played a video that was basically like Why Black Lives Matter is Wrong that was put out by a police association, and that was like his presentation. He was like, here's a video I found online about this. Anyways, one day he said to us that we were talking about like crime or something like that, and then he was explaining to us why Russians would much rather set up car accidents to pretend that they're injured. And like he said, that was like one of the main ways that like Russians make money in Toronto. And he was like, it was kind of funny because he was like claiming that like his own ethnic group was all criminals. He was like, no, this is just the way it works. We're Russian. We would prefer crime to actual jobs. Like and it was kind of funny because the professor, who's I love, the professor's great. She was just kind of like, well, I guess maybe like everyone was kind of like not knowing what to do. And she was kind of like, well, maybe in the future we can do a class about stereotyping, and then just moved on. It was like, that was like her solution to him being like, oh, no, Russians, very intrinsically criminal or something. And I was like, oh, that's good. Yeah, so I'll go with him.
I'll always go to like the Yakuza, I guess, because they haven't been like totally cocked like the mafia got cocked in America. So I feel like they still like run stuff in Japan, but I don't know. I haven't really looked into it too much.
Yeah, I think you got to give it to the Russians in terms of who is kind of winning that game. I think they kind of took things over.
They're kind of the mafia in America now.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a kind of an interesting thing about organized crime in Israel, and however you want to kind of define that.
They're all Russian. Right?
Yeah, right? Like, because there's a lot of connections to different other nations and stuff where that kind of, that's just an interesting kind of intersection there. But I think in terms of who's my favorite, I think I got to go with, I mean, also, I should say the Mexicans deserve a shout out here for the cartels. I mean, they basically took over the whole country at this point. So there's something to be said for that. But I'm going to go with Albanians just because they seem like the craziest ones. Whenever you hear like a crazy story about like mafia guys or whatever, it's always like some Albanian twins with knives or something that like, just like rob a bank and like, just swim with a bag full of money through a river or whatever. I don't know. That's kind of old school and fun. So I'll go with Albanians.
Cool.
All right. What do you think of David Graeber? A lot of people are talking about him now that he died recently. So I'll kick this one off. I read his book Debt and I enjoyed it a lot. It's not like the most well evidenced piece of history ever or anything like that, but it's just kind of an interesting read, and I appreciated a lot of the kind of like props that he gives to Muslims for figuring out a way to make credit work in a way that isn't like financially exploitive and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool reading.
I don't have any knowledge. He's pretty who care to me. Like, I think people read too many of those kind of books. They should probably read more fiction.
Okay, but
well, some people would argue that Debt is fictional. So
Don especially, I think he needs to get more into fiction and politics.
Okay, I accept that criticism, and but no, I really liked. I read fragments of Anarchist Anthropology or something when it came out, and I enjoyed that because he just, I don't know, he seemed like a nice sort of like thinking things through from a very abstract base level kind of thing instead of going along with the culture. He spent a lot of time, I guess, in Mozambique, and he was saying that like he would say stuff like how the government basically didn't exist to people. Like they thought it was just like some random thing that came into your village ever so often and like barked orders or something like that, but had no real relationship to their lives and stuff. And I think that's important because I think a lot of Americans assume that their sort of system of government exists everywhere in a very straightforward way. And if it doesn't, it's just there, but like worse in some way kind of thing, like if they imagine China or something, it's just the American government, but like not democratic or something. And it's like, people are so different in a lot of places that like, it's like, I don't know. I think that's interesting. He also wrote a book that's like 700 pages about him being embedded in like a group that dressed as clowns for a direct action protest. And if he's that, he's willing to write that kind of book. That shows that he's not like going for cheap fame or something kind of thing, like it's not like he wasn't really, he was in demand as a writer, but like it was also like he just kind of did things that he thought were interesting and stuff. So I think that's cool. And he got extremely angry online all the time and blocked about.
Didn't he interact with you at some point?
Yeah, at one time he said that he had like a thing in his book where he said that like no social movement has been ever created by a PhD except for Marxism. So then I said to him that like I said to him that he created the second one when he invented Occupy Wall Street, and then he was like I did not invent it. Please don't say that, or like stuff like that. Yeah, there was like an account called Anarchy Dad, which would just be like making muffins and anarchy or something, like stuff like that, like just, and it was like making fun of him just as like it wasn't even really making fun of him directly. It was just kind of like, it was like in your face, I'm Anarchy Dad. Anyways, he went through the follows list and blocked every single person.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, he would get, and he would name search a lot and stuff. So I don't know. You got to respect that. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. How about we do this one? In honor of Crusader Kings 3 coming out, which I've been spending all of my waking hours playing, what do you guys think your job in medieval society would be? Probably peasant, but you can be more creative. So yeah, with the caveat that, just statistically speaking, obviously most people were peasantry, so let's put that aside and just kind of hope for the best and be optimistic. What would our jobs in medieval society be?
I would definitely be like a priest of some sort. I would join the seminary, or I would, or be like a guru or something like that. I got too much of a rap. I couldn't be held down.
I think I could get into like a theologian sort of a role, like obviously that's a very slim part of the population, all that kind of thing. That's for nobility, but I could see myself kind of doing well in a role like that, where it's just about like spurging out on texts and having debates with other nerds and stuff about things that nobody can prove. I think that would be fun.
I think I'd be kind of similar but I would be like a Dominican friar, but like I would be kicked out. Like I wouldn't be part of the group anymore. I wouldn't be allowed to. Like I would kind of sleep in through the prayers and stuff, and so I would I would live in like kind of like a mud hut sort of near the seminary. I mean near the like abbey or whatever, like I would just sort of live there, and they would like take pity on me and give me food, and I would like pray sometimes and stuff. I think that would be it. That would be
we always shit about being a serf, but wouldn't that be kind of nice? Like when you think about it, like you just sort of do whatever, and you don't have any expectations, and
yeah, as long as there's no war going on, I think it would be pretty nice. Like it's really the war that kind of messes things up.
Right.
But even then, I mean, a lot of the wars and stuff, it was more like, did you hear that the king and like 50 guys that he knows went and fought some people, and we just kind of hang out here kind of thing? I don't know. Like, unless it's like a peasant rebellion or something, yeah.
Well, so. unless like you have, like the army comes through your land is what I mean. Like you don't want to be dealing with that kind of thing, because then they just, have their way with your crops and your women kind of a thing.
Modern life is just too stressful. Like I'm sitting here, and our air is disgusting. It's probably like the worst air in the world, pretty much, because of the fires. And you're like thinking like, oh my God, climate change and all that kind of crap. Modern life is just way too stressful.
Yeah, I guess like the difference is that like in medieval times you had to like read about the apocalypse and you thought it was coming like 10 years from now or something. You were terrified of it, but now we're like actually living through it, and it's just sort of like half-assed and boring and stuff. So so I mean, just to check how are things there? Like I had assumed that the fires weren't really spreading through Canada, but like it's like It's just the smoke is right. So is that
Yeah,
what's
it's
happening?
all
So
Washington and Oregon, and just the way the wind's blowing, we're getting it
sure,
all.
yeah. Um, is it enough? Like I know people in LA that are just like bedridden basically because they can't like function. But it's not that bad, is it, or is it just not great?
I imagine it would probably be close to that if it stays for a few more days. Like,
Okay,
only been like 2 solid days of this, so like
sure,
where you wake up and it smells like a campfire though everywhere. So it's
yeah,
been 2 solid days. If it goes for a few more days, then people will be suffering.
sure. Um, uh, is there any chance that the fire is going to spread to you guys? Like, is it that
I
is it
don't
that
think
it
so.
can't go that far? I don't know
No.
how that works, or like it's okay. Well, I don't know. Stay safe. I don't know. We're pulling for you guys, but more than the Americans, obviously. Like I don't,
Yeah.
whatever happens to them is like sort of a bed that they've set themselves. So
They
we'll just,
deserve it.
yeah.
All right. This one says, should I become a black man? I don't know what that process would be, but let's just assume he's got it figured out.
Is there surgery for that now?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, let's just assume he's got it figured out, and let's talk about whether that's a good idea or not. I think that it might be a little bit. I don't know. Your insurance rates and stuff might go up. Maybe pick something a little bit easier way into it. Maybe go kind of like Filipino or something like that. Something that you can ease your way into the POC lifestyle and then see how it feels, and then maybe move on to the, if you want to go all the way, you can make that decision later, I assume.
And you got to do it very early so that people will understand. Like, you've got a whole history of being a white guy up until this time.
Yeah.
So how you erase that? It's impossible.
I was imagining that they would like greet him at the hospital all nice and everything, and being like, oh, welcome, and being all like helping him and preparing him stuff. But then as soon as they're done the surgery, they're like, you're not getting any pain medication. Get out of here, or whatever. So
handle it.
Imagine there's like a hospital that is doing this, and it's not like any surgical procedure. It's just like a nurse comes in with some shoe polish and a brush.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of those fires and stuff, someone said, do you think the fires on the West Coast could be the work of several or perhaps only a single djinn? There have been a few signs that people have noticed, and it's worth reading up on. I tend to take the position of skepticism about djinn activity, and unless it can be kind of demonstrated that there's no reason to think otherwise, I'm going to say that I doubt that there's djinn involved. I think we screw things up for ourselves pretty well on our own, that we don't need to blame djinn for things. They have their own thing going on.
There's enough evil. There's enough retardation and evilness in the world that we don't need to blame it on djinn. It's just your bros. Like, it's some retard who is driving down the highway and threw a cigarette out the window.
Yeah.
People are too lax with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And there's a follow-up question here. Is it true that one can see the smoke from Chicago? Well, I couldn't tell you because I haven't been outside since it started, so I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, Dave. That was fun. And
I love coming on and talking to you guys. We're all bros, and I'll try and come on again soon. We got to talk. We'll figure out something else.
Yeah, we got a lovely message the other day from someone saying, please have Big Dave on again more. And,
yeah, people love Big Dave.
Appreciate it.
We love it.
I'm going to start smoking, though, so my voice gets cooler.
Yeah, raspy and all that. So,
that's a good idea. Yeah.
Sure.
Take a shot before.
Yeah, I definitely got a nerdy voice, so I'm going to start smoking, I think.
All right, sounds good. We'll check in with you next time. You start smoking a pack a day, and we'll see how it changes.
Okay. All right. See you guys.
All right. See you, Dave.
Have a good night.
All All right, guys, thanks for listening. If you like this episode and you'd like a second episode of You Can't Win every week, you can subscribe to our Patreon for that, and you will also get access to our Discord where you can chat with us in our community. Don't forget that we also have a Curious Cat where you can send in those anonymous questions that we answer at the end of the episode, and that is pinned to the Twitter account of the podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next week.